Okay, picture this. You're a young engineer, and your professor tells you flat out that your country is only good for buying cars, not making them. Ouch. But instead of getting discouraged, you take that insult and you build a car company from scratch with just 50 grand. And for more than 20 years, you actually succeed. You even create Latin America's very first electric car. But then, almost overnight, the entire dream just collapses. This is the incredible story of Gurgel, Brazil's one and only national car company. And let me tell you, it's a wild ride through vision, innovation, and ultimately, catastrophic failure.
So that's the big question we're going to tackle, right? How does a nation's only car maker just vanish? I mean, this wasn't some small startup. We're talking about a company that built vehicles for the military, exported to 40 different countries, and was a leader in new tech. How does that just disappear? Well, the answer isn't some boring business school case study. No, it's way more dramatic than that.
And believe it or not, it all started with this one single, totally dismissive comment. A professor at a top university telling a young student, Jang Gurgel, in Brazil, you don't make a car, you buy one. Now, for most of us, that's where the story would end, right? Dream crushed. But for Jang Gurgel, that was the spark. It became his lifelong obsession to prove that professor, and frankly the entire world, completely wrong.
So Jang Gurgel, he was no slouch. He went to the US, trained with giants like General Motors. He could have easily come back to Brazil and had a cushy job assembling their parts, but that wasn't his style. No. He had this incredibly defiant vision. He wanted to create a completely Brazilian automotive industry. We're talking cars designed by Brazilians for Brazilians.
Now, to really get how bold this was, you have to picture Brazil back in 1969. The country's borders were pretty much sealed to foreign car imports. You couldn't just buy a Toyota. But the market was totally dominated by the big guys, Volkswagen, Ford, GM, who all had factories there. And into this lion's den steps Jang Gurgel with just 50,000 bucks and this crazy, radical idea of true automotive independence. Look, Gurgel was smart. He knew he couldn't go head-to-head with these global giants on their own terms. He wasn't going to outproduce them. He definitely wasn't going to outspend them. So what do? You have to outthink them. And that's exactly what he did. It led to an incredible innovation that really became the backbone of his company's success.
So, what was this secret weapon? It was a material he patented called Plastile. And no, this wasn't just some marketing gimmick. It was a real, genuine technological edge. Think about it. In Brazil's superhuman climate, cars rusted like crazy. So a rust-proof body, that's a killer feature. Plus, it was lightweight and super tough, which was absolutely perfect for Brazil's often unpaved roads.
And boy, did that innovation pay off. First, you get the ultimate seal of approval. The Brazilian military starts buying his Plastile-based vehicle, the Exavante X12, in huge numbers. I mean, if it's tough enough for the army, right? That validation opened the floodgates for exports. Soon, that tough little vehicle was being sold in over 40 countries. And by 1984, their SUV, the Carajás, was the best-selling SUV in all of Brazil. Gurgel had found his sweet spot, and business was booming. But here's where the story gets really wild. Gurgel wasn't just thinking about today's rough roads, he was already thinking about tomorrow. The 1973 oil crisis hits, and what does he do? He unveils the Itaipu E150. Get this, it was Latin America's first ever electric car. We're talking 1974, decades before EVs were cool. Gurgel had a working prototype. Now, okay, the battery technology back then held it back, for sure, but it just goes to show you how ridiculously far ahead of the curve this guy was. Okay, so at this point, military contracts are locked in, they're dominating the SUV market. Gurgel could have just sat back and counted his money, but he had unfinished business. He set his sights on the ultimate goal, the thing that started it all, finally fulfilling that original dream of building a truly affordable, mass-market car for the average Brazilian family. And the result? It was called the BR800. And this little car was a monumental achievement. The BR literally stood for Brazil, and the 800 was for its Gurgel-designed, Gurgel-built 800cc engine. This wasn't just assembled in Brazil with foreign parts. No, this was born and bred in Brazil. It was the absolute peak of that dream of sovereignty, a car the entire nation could finally call its own. So how do you fund a project this ambitious? Well, Gurgel did something that was totally revolutionary for the time. Decades before Kickstarter or GoFundMe, he basically crowdfunded the whole thing. If you wanted to buy one of the first cars, you had to buy shares in the company. And it worked. 8,000 regular Brazilians put their own money on the line, becoming part owners of this incredible national dream.
But there was a key piece to this puzzle. How did they make it so affordable? Gurgel managed to get a special low tax rate from the government, so the BR-800 paid only a 5% industrial tax, while its competitors were paying 25% or even more. That gave it a massive 30% price advantage, making it the cheapest car in Brazil, hands down. But, and this is a huge but, that advantage was built on incredibly fragile ground, as they were about to find out.
So for 2 solid decades, Jang Gurgel had fought against all the odds, and won. The company was at its absolute peak. The dream was real. And then, in a matter of months, it all came crashing down. And the speed of the collapse was just breathtaking.
So what happened? Well, in 1990, a new president, Fernando Collor, comes to power, and he has a plan to radically open up Brazil's protected economy. For Gurgel, this was a devastating 1-2 punch. First, the government gets rid of that special tax rate. Suddenly, all small cars have the same tax, and poof, the BR-800's 30% price advantage is gone. Just like that. Then, punch number 2, they opened the borders to foreign car imports for the first time in decades. All those protective walls Gurgel had relied on, they were just gone.
And the fallout was immediate and just catastrophic. Fiat swoops in and launches its Uno Mille for the exact same price as the BR-800, but it has a better engine, more features. The BR-800's market just evaporated. And it gets worse. For their SUV, the rugged Russian Lada Niva starts getting imported, and even after paying a massive 85% tariff, it was still cheaper than Gurgel's Carajás. In the blink of an eye, Gurgel's entire product line was made uncompetitive.
The company just started hemorrhaging money. Sales completely collapsed. They asked for an emergency government loan. They were denied. And by 1995, it was all over. Gurgel declared bankruptcy. The final debt? A staggering $1.2 billion. So the factories went silent. The dream, it seemed, was dead. But you know, the story of Gurgel doesn't really end there, because its incredible rise and its spectacular fall left behind this powerful legacy, with lessons that are maybe more relevant today than they ever were.
And this really makes you wonder, right? Why does a failed car company from the 90s still matter today? Why are we even talking about it? Well, because it's so much more than just a business story. It's really a cautionary tale about innovation, about government policy, and about national ambition.
I mean, the takeaways here are crystal clear. Lesson 1, if your entire competitive advantage is built on a special deal from the government, you're living in a house of cards. The second that policy changes, the whole thing can collapse. Lesson 2, Brazil literally had a 50-year head start on electric vehicles and just let it slip away. Think about that. Third, you can't build a national champion with just one visionary engineer. You need stable, long-term support. And finally, the toughest lesson of all. Gurgel proves that even the most brilliant innovation can be wiped out when the entire market changes overnight.
And that really leaves us with a fascinating question for right now, for today. We know Gurgel was a man 50 years ahead of his time, especially with electric cars. Fast forward to today, and Brazil has massive reserves of lithium and one of the world's cleanest energy grids. I mean, those are the perfect ingredients to become an EV powerhouse, right? So the real question is, has the country learned the hard lessons from Gurgel's collapse, and is it finally ready to support the next Jang Gurgel who dares to dream of building a truly Brazilian car?